Hello everybody. Just felt in the spur of the moment that I wanted to make a video to share with you. Let's get cozy here. Share with you about a process that I'm going through, and I might share this quite a lot later, depending on how extrovert I want to be about it. It's about birth, it's about pregnancy, and as you may or may not know, me or anything, I'm a 34-year-old white woman, married, and I live in Devon in the UK, and I'm very healthy. Generally, I've had some chronic, they've been pretty cured issues. I had menstrual issues for a while, and the thyroid, which seems to have balanced at the right time in advance of becoming pregnant. Actually, I had amenorrhea, so I had a disappearance of my bloods, my period blood, for about half a year, but I actually had that for most of my teens when I first entered menarche, the beginning of menstruation and that initiation of becoming a young woman, which was not a positive experience for me at all, and that's very common for many people. So anyway, I just wanted to share that kind of background with you. So I was worried about fertility from a young age, and had an aunt on my mother's side who was infertile, perhaps other complications there. I'm not sure, but that's sort of what I understood as a child. And my grandma on my dad's side, so my dad's mum, had countless miscarriages before she first held the conception of my dad to full term, and then had him and had 3 further children. I'm not sure if there were miscarriages after that as well, but and she actually carried my dad to full term through bedriding herself. That sounds weird to say bedriding herself. She remained pretty much at the home the whole time. She believed that was the way she was going to carry the baby healthily. I'm not sure what she was advised or what, but whether she was just following her intuition and that was perfect or whatever. But she had quite a story. So I had these sort of facts, near ancestral facts, and my own menstrual cycle playing up, and also not conceiving for a few years. So it was a kind of in and out of trying, and not kind of continuous sort of high intensity, basically. So I was a little bit unsure of myself, but also really supporting myself naturopathically as someone who's been training in naturopathy as a practitioner, and I have been on that kind of fertility nutrition, and also as a womb yogini, practicing yoga practices and basically a yoga culture, a yoga lifestyle, as it were, an honouring and a devotional lifestyle to womb empowerment and support, which is also on just a philosophical level, the feminine, the goddess, and a reclaiming of the feminine within my ancestry into my contemporary modern ancestry, and linking her lineages back to an ancestor who I connected with, probably a few, but one in particular by name, which is pretty ancient, very far back, thanks to some ancestral work I did in the last year with a practitioner online. And she's called Sasha Heron, by the way, if you happen to be watching this looking for shamanic ancestral work. Incredible woman who offered a course. Anyway, I am going to continue talking about that, but I think the thing that is really interesting as I'm sharing with you is this whole lineage thing around the feminine, and reclaiming in terms of remembering the core lifeblood thread of the archetypal feminine, and I've worked with that through astrology, mythology and archetypes within my chart. And I'm just realizing, in this journey, how much of that has, I can't pull evidence or ascertain and say that this equals this, but I know that having done this multi-layered work in my life, that it's led me to a place of fertility. And fertility speaks to so many things. Fertility is not just the physiological impregnation, creation of a new incredible life. Fertility is also the ripeness and the richness of our body to be sensitive to the ecology around us and within us. It is aliveness to the cosmos, aliveness to nature, because nature is fertile, right? Even if we live in places of the world where sadly it has been destroyed by war, and mainly war, and whether it's military war or whether it's war on the earth through pesticides. These are issues that destroy the feminine, and they destroy the masculine as well. They destroy men, women, and everyone, whatever gender they ascribe to. It is a destructive mechanism. So to really intentionally cultivate and to protect the thread of connection to the life essence, which doesn't need to be seen as the feminine, actually, if you prefer, because that can be quite limiting. And it can also be a sort of dualistic thing where, we're kind of pitting things against each other, and, patriarchy versus matriarchy. And I really love stepping back from that whole patriarchy-matriarchy thing. And I usually use those words for sure, but in terms of a sort of philosophical dive, I love the word matricentric, where maternity is centric. So the maternal instincts are central in a society, which in our prehistory they were. Where did I come across that term? It might be in The Initiation of Childbirth, or Reclaiming the Right of Childbirth, by Rachel Reed, or she might have taken it from somewhere else. And these are cultures who worshipped fertility, goddesses. You could say goddesses, deities, but it's not in the way we see it, in terms of, there's a deity that's female and has that, like, let's put out on the altar to represent female power or something like that, and then let's have something on the altar to represent the phallus, and let's have something else to represent birds or something. It's not like that. It's fertility was a divine attribute. Fertility is at the core of worship and of life. It's beyond like male, female, an image of a deity. Like it is just life. Is this life is emanating with fertility, because when you're reliant on the earth, which we are still. We think we're not reliant on the earth for agriculture because we're so distanced and clinicalized from it. But when you're reliant on the earth, which ancestrally we are, and I think if we have the courage to go on that journey and remember that, and the courage to go on the journey of feeling stripped away by the fact that we are disconnected from the land. My real conscious journey about that started during my Saturn return, if you know what that is, at the end of my 20s. And it was a really depressing journey. And then COVID struck and lockdown struck. And it got even worse. So And I was pretty privileged because I had a roof over my house and I lived in a safe domestic environment. And we had finances coming in because one of us had a good job. So I was very thankful and grateful for that. But the emotional effect of processing the degradation of Earth, the climate crisis, and trying to grow my own food and realizing that I didn't actually know how to do it and how disconnected that I was. But that's okay. We have to start at square one. But that, these things are all interwoven. These things are so important. It is a lifestyle of devotion to fertility. Not, when I say fertility, in our minds we're thinking of the physical, anatomical process of a woman, or of a man. Fertility is life. It is about, and if you're if you happen to be temporarily or your experience is infertility, then that's not to disgrade that or just disconnect from what that experience is. I'm talking about the concept of fertility on a larger, grander scale than that. The fertility of God, if you want to say, of the cosmos recreating itself every day, from stars exploding and the compost in your garden that you may or may not have, or the compost that naturally happens to the leaves on the footpath outside your house. That's fertility. It may be large or it may be small in its capacity, but there's something there, and there's something to work with, and it may be abundant, it may not be, but there is something. So, this is quite an interesting talk that I'm exploring with you about fertility, and I don't know where I'm going with that, but the minute I'm writing a podcast with my university colleagues for our project, and I'm writing it about the fertility deity of Venus. Well, Venus is the Roman counterpart. Then you had Aphrodite in Greece. And then you had, previous to Greece, so there's Rome, then there's Greece. And then previous to that, there would have been in the Babylonian and the Mesopotamian cosmologies many different terms. So there was Inanna for the Sumerian, there was Ishtar for the Akkadian, and there are other, there's Astarte, I think that's Canaan, and these other things I need to brush up on. But these days, it's incredible when you go back in history, particularly I find when you get to the early AD time period, and you get, this is antiquity, and you get to the BC period, and you start to go back, it gets really interesting in terms of things, to me anyway, particularly from a cosmological perspective, seem to get fuller, and they seem to get more sort of what I would say closer to the origins of what I innately feel. And then you start to see Greece and Rome empires. There's Egypt in there as well. But you start to see Greece and Rome empires starting to percolate things, and there were a lot of polytheistic, multiple different ideas, but they started to become increasingly Christianized and become open to a necessity to conform over time, and you get that in sort of the mid ADs, and then continuing up, particularly to the medieval times, the Middle Ages, the early 1000s. Then you start to get the real lockdown on, and that's when a lot of esoteric thought migrated to the Middle East. So you got a lot of manuscripts written in Arabic at that point, because it was a lot safer, and there was still a lot of monotheism, of course, because Islam, and so Christianity and Islam being side by side, but it was a bit later, so it was a little freer and open for people to scholars, let's say, particularly because it was the privileged, mostly men, who were in those kind of environments, sadly, as history goes, as modern history. And maybe I know modern history isn't everything after AD, but definitely modern history, and then antiquity to a degree. Anyway, I am really enjoying this research, and how, as I'm looking back into antiquity and the BC era, how much fertility was at the core of worship, and then you go to prehistory and Paleolithic times, and there was so much archaeological evidence. Anyway, I feel like I rambled on, but these are so important topics for our times, because they reconnect us. They're not outdated things. They're really, it's like finding that little box in the earth that someone buried. When I was little, there was a series or this film where kids buried boxes with trinkets, and then families decades later would find them in their gardens from a war child, a child in World War II who buried his toy soldier or something, and then someone in the 80s would find it. It's like that, but through the hundreds of thousands, well, at least thousands, not hundreds of thousands of years of rediscovering this treasure that is within the earth of our body. So we have it in our innate blood, and we also have it archaeologically in the earth. We also have, actual academic scholarly work going on. We have practitioners, and we have, conversation. So, so this wasn't really, I thought I might be speaking about my process of pregnancy and the way I'm navigating that, but I think that will come on another, my memory's gone for the right word, another moment of recording. Thank you for watching, and I'd really love to have a conversation about this if you are up for that.